Hey there, Vanelli here from photofocus.com. Now, we all know Aurora HDR is great for landscapes, but did you know you can also use it to create the popular sports grit look? In this video tutorial, I'm going to walk you through all the steps needed and even let you use the same files to practice and create your own sports grit look. Let's get started. The sports grit look all begins with harsh light. See, harsh light produces strong shadows, and that's going to help us create a very powerful image. Now, for this example, we'll use a 3-light setup. We'll have 2 strip boxes in the back, and then we have a beauty dish in the front, and typically we have a black backdrop. Now, the lighting ratio is this. We use a light meter, and we set the backlights to, let's say, f11. Now, we want our key light be 1 stop less, so we'll set that at f8. For the camera settings, we'll dial in f8 at 1/60th of a second, and then use our lowest ISO. For this example, I use 64. Now, what that's going to do for us is going to kill all the ambient light in the room. Now, to test that, we'll take 1 shot of just the setup without any lights. And what we should have is a pure black image. Next, we'll turn on each of the lights independently so we can see what each of the lights are doing to the image. Here is the right side. Here's the left side. Now, when we put them together, we'll see what both of the strip lights are doing in the back. Notice the front of the subject is in shadow. Well, here's where the key light comes into play. Now, if we just photograph this image just with 1 light, notice how flat it looks. But when we combine all the lights together, it gives it more depth and dimension. And then from here, we apply the sports grit look, and we're ready to go. Okay, let's start by selecting an image and opening it in Aurora. Now, the first thing we need to do is uncheck tone mapping. Now, tone mapping is the process of converting the tonal value of an image from a higher range to a lower range. And usually, you apply it when you have multiple images. In this case, we're only dealing with 1 image, and we don't need Aurora to tone map it for us. Then click Create HDR. I want to start with the HDR panel to prepare our image. The first thing I want to do is take the HDR Enhance and move it all the way up to 100 to add more clarity to the image. Next, I'll dial back the tonal value. This is only going to affect the brighter parts of the image. I'll increase the highlights to make them more pronounced, deepen the shadows, adjust the whites to make them stand out, and enrich the blacks. Now, just by making those few changes, our image is already looking more dramatic. Now, throughout this tutorial, I'm going to rely on the visibility icon to help me gauge the effects I'm creating. So I'm going to click on it, and I'll see a before and after image. Now, a characteristic of the grit look is muted colors. Now, this is going to be accomplished by desaturating the colors, but then we're going to increase the vibrancy. And what that's going to do for us, it's going to increase just the muted colors. So it's going to give me that overall color look that we're going for. Let's look at the before and after again. Let's develop the image using multiple layers to selectively apply the right amount of structure that gives us that sport grit look. To create a new layer, let's click on the plus icon, and we're going to select Add New Adjustment Layer. Now that we have a new layer, what we want to do is come down to the structure panel. We're going to adjust the amount to 100%, and let's double click on our image to zoom at 100%. Now, what we want to do is just pay close attention at what structure is doing to the oar and to his body. We're going to stay away from the face itself because we're going to put that on its own layer. And I like what it's looking like here. For the softness, let's increase that. So, ooh, look what it's doing. It's making it nice and smooth, and it's still giving us that grit look. Now, boost is going to increase the intensity of the effect. Let's try it at 100%. And I really like how that's looking. The HDR microstructure is going to amplify the micro details within the image. Now, these are the small details that form the surface of the object, and in this case, the uniform. Now we're going to adjust that to the right, and it's going to increase it. Now, I really don't like the way it's looking, so I'm going to just double click back on the amount, and I'll go back to the default of 0, and I'm not going to use the micro because I like the way it's looking as is. Here's before and after again. I'm going to double click to zoom out. I really like what it's doing to his uniform and to the paddle. I don't like what it's doing to the face, but that's okay. That's why we put it on its own layer. By having it on its own layer, now what we can do is use the power of the layers brush. So I'm going to click on the layer brush and select brush. And what I want to do is erase or paint out the effect on his face. I'm going to start with the opacity at 100%. And I'm just going to come across and paint out the effect on his face, along with his hands. Now, to see where I painted, I'm going to come over here, click on the visibility icon. What that's going to do is show us a red overlay. Now, if it's pure red, it's showing us that the effect is being applied to those areas, and the areas that are punched through, like this, are showing us that the effect is not going to be applied to those areas. Notice we have some fading up in here. What that's going to show us is it's lightly being affected to those areas itself. So this is very helpful in showing us where we're painting. I'm really liking how this looks. Now let's apply another adjustment layer. And this adjustment layer is strictly going to focus on his face. So let's double click again to go at 100%. And I'm going to zoom in on the face itself. And now from here, I want to apply the adjustments just to the face area. So let's come back over here to our structure. And we'll start by increasing it just a touch. You know what? Let's increase the amount just a little bit more. Dial back some of the softness to make it a little bit sharper. Good. Now, since it's on its own layer and I'm only dealing with the face, let's come over here back to the HDR basic, and let's dial back the highlights. Good. Increase the shadows a bit, adjust the whites, and of course, go back to the blacks. Oh, good. I like how that's looking. Again, let's go to before and after. So before and after. And we're off to a really, really good start. Now let's zoom back out. Now notice, because we applied it on its own layer, the entire image is being affected. Now I can click on the visibility icon on the layer itself to show what each of the layers are doing. So here's what it was before. Here what it looked like after. And again, I don't want it on the body. I just want it on the face. So let's click on the brush tool again. And this time, instead of clicking erase, we want to click paint. And we want to paint in the effect in certain areas. And here is where we want to paint it onto the face. Good. Yeah, we can paint it onto the hands. Good. Click on the invisibility icon again to see the mask. And this is where we're painting. And that looks good. Now, because it's on its own layer again, if I want to, I can take the opacity slider and I can move it all the way to the left towards the 0 value, and that hides the entire effect. Or I can crank it back up and dial it in. In this case, I'm going to leave it at about 93%. Good, so I really like how this is looking. But I really want to bring out a little bit more detail in the face. So once again, let's click on Add Adjustment Layer. Now to focus just on the face, let's double click to zoom in. And this time, we're going to use the Dodge and Burn effect. Click on Start Painting. And I want to darken the image. So I want to get his beard just a little bit darker. 50% is a little bit high for the strength. Let's bring that down to maybe 9 or 10%. Good. And I'm going to come in here and just paint in a little darker areas onto the beard. Using the bracket keys, I'm going to make my brush either larger or smaller. I'll zoom out a little bit and adjust the hair. Good. By clicking on the layers visibility icon, I can toggle on and off the effect to see what the effect is doing. And when I'm finished, I'll click on done. All right, let's zoom back out, so double click, and let's look at the before and after. Here's before, and here's after, and we have one last step we're gonna do to tie it all in. We're gonna create another layer mask. This time what I wanna do is darken the lower half of the image. I'm gonna maneuver to the top and bottom tuning section. I'll select bottom, and I'm gonna drag the exposure slider off to the left. Now notice it's going to darken the lower half of the image. So here's what it looks like before and after. So before and after, just that little extra is going to tie everything in so it'll bring focus towards his face. Now let's save our work in case we want to come back to it. So we'll click on File, Save, give it a name, and press Save. Now it's saved the document. So if we want to go back, we can make further changes or edits. Now let's export this image as a JPEG so we can give it to the coach and to the player. We'll click on the little send icon and we'll click export image. From here, I'll choose JPEG as a format, select my size, and of course the folder where I want to save it as, and then click export. How cool is that? We're able to use Aurora, which is typically associated with landscapes and architecture, and use it in our portrait workflow.